Man, my thoughts have been on Penelope. She was uh, a 16-year-old girl that unfortunately committed suicide due to the group 764. I know I talk about the Order of the Nine Angles and how terrible they are, but they're not the only group. There are other anti-cosmic cults that again you should really watch out for that are a genuine threat to our children, to our society. You know, um, and yeah, so you have like 764, or seven. I can't even remember. I'm dyscalculic. Fuck. You have them. You have the Order of the Nine Angles. You have Temple of Blood. I think the Order of what is it? The Black Light. There's the Dracon Covenant. There's so many of these groups, and it's mind-boggling. I think there's another one called like Misanthrope Division. Um, yeah, no, and then there's a few, ones that mainly infiltrate the communists and operate within them, whereas a lot of them will you know, form as an infestation within the far right. But it's on both sides, and they really have no allegiance to either. Um, my point is, and it's terrible. I've met people that have been groomed by them when they were children, and they're still broken as adults. The internet is not a good thing, um, and I don't know. I would just recommend like keeping your kids off the internet. The only reason why some of my horrific graphic videos where I swear and I'm obnoxious, where I talk about like the O9A, things like that, why some of them I don't put under 18 is because I hope some kids come across this and they're like, "Oh, this is what this is?" Huh. Okay. That's scary. So if it comes up, they're not eased into it. They're just like, "Oh, nope." Um I don't know. Like let's just face it, kids are stupid. They're easy to manipulate, and you know, it's like propaganda, right? Propaganda is the adult version of child manipulation. If you have bad propaganda, adults will basically, because most adults aren't conscious, and are easily misled, will develop unhealthy ways of life just because of imagery, just because of media. Whereas you create good manipulation, good psychological manipulation, good propaganda, that makes people act healthier, right? Most people are not conscious. Most, like, people don't have free will. Most people, like, we are a herd species that relies on either tyrants or good leaders to make all of our decisions for us. And there's so many good people out there that, how do I put this, are constantly fighting an uphill battle against cults and all sorts of things. And I say to them, well, there's so many people dedicated to rescuing people from cults, but for every person that's taken out of a cult, more people join. Why is this? It's because, in general, humans are hierarchical, we're collective, and we think like a hive mind. So, yeah, and that's a good thing, too, because here's the thing. Imagine, you have a road path to utopia and the height of civilization, and it takes the labor of everyone, 100 people, let's say. Now you have 100 people that think for themselves. Now they're going to argue over the semantics of what utopia is, and they're going to go off on a million roads that lead to nowhere, and they will stay there at dead ends, right? Everyone will take, every road other than the one that leads to utopia. So if you have someone that actually sees that road and he tells everyone to go in that direction, everyone goes in that direction. You have a tyrant, he'll say, go backwards, right? And what's worse than a tyrant, is not having a tyrant, is not having a leader, right? Anarchy is the worst outcome, right? Because it's a vacuum. You might have a bad tyrant, but then you kill them, right? And then you subconsciously associate their position of office as the corrupting factor rather than them being corrupt. Honestly, like saying, oh, no man should have this amount of power. The phrase absolute power corrupts absolutely takes the accountability away from individuals who are already sour and make bad decisions, and disempowers those to basically disempowers those innocent people that could find an alternative, right? And yeah, you say, okay, well, this will never happen again. We'll never give someone this amount of power. Well, you've removed the power to stop someone from ever doing this to anyone ever again. And you destroy the position of power. You destroy the throne. Well, now there's no throne. So the next person comes in, they build a greater throne, and then they double down and become twice the problem, right? It's only through accepting responsibility, accepting that good people, or great people rather, are not corrupted by power. They use power to, promote goodness and greatness. And this has happened plenty of times in history where you gave someone that was of good moral character absolute authority, and they created an absolutely good situation, right? It's cognitive dissonance saying that, it is just positions of power that create bad people, as if, like saying that there was nothing wrong with Jeffrey Dahmer before he had access to gay bars. No, there was definitely something wrong with him. It's not that power corrupts. It's just that if you're already a corrupted individual, power will reveal it or whatever. But tyrants don't last long. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And yeah, good people, strong people can take the reins, right? So I've met people that are cult survivors. They escaped out of literal cult compounds. And what I find interesting is basically, and this will relate to stopping these groups from terrorizing our children, mind you, but, every day, you, the person watching this, you're lied to. You're told that you matter, your desires matter, your personality matters, that you as a person matter. Your desires, your goals, your dreams, your hopes. When it doesn't, you only exist as a cog in the machine of your species, right? Your community. You are not a person that has a family. You are an extension of your own family, an extension of your own house. Your body is not your own. You don't own your body. You don't own your reproductive organs, male or female. You have no control, and this world isn't about you. And yet you will go to school, you will go to work, you will go everywhere and be told by your family, your friends, that you matter as an individual, your desires matter, your goals, your ambitions, your dreams, all of that. And you'll be falsely told to, grow your own branches, make a life for yourself, as opposed to, being a part of the life of the community, being a part of the life of your actual family, breaking away from your family, creating a family of your own, right? Leaving your friends and family behind to self-isolate. You'll be told that, being absent from the thoughts of everyone else and being absorbed in your own is a good thing, right? You'll be told that even though, your own personal subjective world you make for yourself out of materialism, your own, your motif, the way you decorate your apartment, the way you dress, your fashion sense, all of that, which doesn't matter because one day you'll be rotting in the ground or be a pile of ash, on someone's shelf, a family member preferably. And, you're told that all of these impermanent, unimportant things about you are everything that define you as a person. And, in that you basically have no purpose. And since there's no purpose, you have to figure it out for yourself. So, if you're the common person watching this, every day, your own family is lying to you. Your girlfriend or boyfriend is lying to you. Your parents lied to you. Your teachers lied to you. Your police, your firefighters, everyone, the lady at the post office, they all lie to you. In each and every individual way, they have taught you to break apart your own life and compartmentalize it and isolate it from each other in a subjective world that is not permanent. And then you're separated from the objective world that is permanent, that is long lasting, that is eternal. And now that you've been separated from the eternal, separated from the life of actual humanity, separated from your own humanity, you exist and you don't think. You're easy to manipulate because what's the point in thinking when the reality is this is just the world you've created for yourself because everyone told you that's what you're supposed to do. And as a result, it's no surprise that you're going to join a cult, because they'll say, oh, well, cults take advantage of people from poorer backgrounds or people with mental health problems. Oh, that's absolutely not true. Now, there are so many people that come from good financial backgrounds that join like the radical sects of the Mormons, where they still like rape little girls, wealthy people. There's all sorts of people I've met that are from cults that, they got out, but they were raised by a good family. They had everything, right? They never really had a traumatic event in their life. Their mother and father loved them. They never had to struggle, right? They were in good mental health, and they still were roped into joining. So what ultimately is the case is you have mentally ill people that join, and you have mentally healthy people that join. You have rich people that join, and you have poor people that join. So all the factors that anti-cult initiatives tell you are basically false. It reminds me of Australian Jesus, where this guy, he was happy with his wife, and this cult leader basically talked to this woman, and she was convinced that she was Mary Magdalene, left her husband and joined this Australian Jesus in a cult compound, right? You might be thinking, well, she has to be mentally ill. There's no way anyone just does that. No, you would be surprised. People, that had been lied to by their friends, their family, and everyone, so lied to that the people lying to them are convinced of their lies because everyone else lied to them. So if you live a life that is a lie, and for the first time in your life, this person is honest with you and tells you that you don't matter and that there is something greater than yourself, and that your individuality doesn't matter, and that you're just a speck of dust in the grain or a grain of sand that is a part of the desert of your collective and the history of your species, and you realize your insignificance and that your only significance comes through your contributions and legacy to the community, then once you realize why you exist, when you understand human nature, the nature of your species, all of that, in your, oh, hold on, this cat is acting crazy, and you're basically just told the truth, right? So this crazy cult leader, you got to think, all of these rational, sane-minded people throughout your whole life tell you lies after lies. This is the first person in your life that tells you the truth, that is honest with you, that knows the truth themselves, right? You don't know that they're a tyrant, but you're looking for leadership, you're looking for purpose, and everyone has told you that purpose doesn't exist, that it's a superstition, right? That it's made up, and that you're important when you're not. And then they lay out this fact, and then it feels enlightening, right? Because naturally as humans, we're supposed to surrender. We're supposed to be drones working for the queen. And when you see the potential as a lost ant that has been walking through many fields of grass, and you see the ant colony, and you yearn to be a part of the colony, a part of the collective, a part of the hive mind, you're about willing to join about anything if something will tell you the truth. So when you're told, that you're an ant, because you are, and that this is a colony, it's like, well, every other person told me that I wasn't an ant, but here I am an ant. Okay. If everyone else lied to me, if literally every single person in all of society, my own family, my friends, my lovers, lied to me, my teachers lied to me about why I'm here, and this is the first person out of my entire existence that tells the truth, why am I not going to drop everything? Why am I not going to give them all my money? Why am I not going to let them fuck my wife? Why am I not going to like start bleeding myself and drinking cyanide Kool-Aid, right? Because everyone else lied to me, but they're not. So, shit. I might as well believe the rest of it, right? I want to know this truth. So that's how they get you, right? Basically, these cult and anti-cult initiatives will try to promote individuality, critical thinking, and all of these types of things, and try to basically convince people to exist of their own accord and then die. And then that's supposed to be your alternate model for getting people out of cults and preventing cults. That makes absolutely no sense. That is not logical. That is wrong. That is evil. And you know, basically, I had a friend where people were starting to act cultish towards him, right? And he didn't want to be the leader of a cult. He had good charisma, and he kind of distanced himself from that situation. And I said to him, I said, hey, you know what? And I've said this to him a few times. I said, you know what? If they're not worshiping you, if they're not giving you money, if they're not following you, if you're not giving them orders, right? If you're concerned that you don't want to take advantage of them, if you're concerned that they are putting too much trust in you, then that is a good sign that you're a good human being. But that only means you're a good human being, not a great human being, right? Um, is good human beings, good people, have always existed. Every generation we say, where did all the good people in the world go? No, there's just as many good people now as there was at any other time period in history. But the thing is, good people don't accomplish anything. They always follow a pre-constructed morality that is built by people that don't have morality. These elites create the rule. They create these hero's journey narratives of right and wrong and having the moral high ground, like Batman not killing a pedophile or Superman, basically letting people continue to take people hostage, right? Um, because ultimately Superman and Batman doesn't exist. So all of these fabled victories they have, we grew up as kids, we see that, and we're thinking, oh, I want to be like that. Meanwhile, in reality, the villains, the Joker, right? Lex Luthor are the ones in control of society. And they write that because they want people to act like Superman. They want people to act like Batman. That's why you have the saying, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain, as if that's a bad thing. You see, heroes die because they accomplish nothing. They set out to a goal and they fail, and everyone suffers because of it. Whereas villains live long enough to keep through on their promises. That's what makes them villains. So good people will basically have this mentality of the high road where they'll be like, oh, well, I could save 1,000 people, right? But, the ends don't justify the means. If I have to do this terrible, horrible thing to save all these people, then, that makes me as much of a monster as the one that put these people in this situation. And I don't want to do that. So good people, average people, right? These people that are like, I just want to do the right thing and I don't want to, make the hard decisions. These good people will basically watch innocent people die every day. They will willingly relinquish power because even the elites, they know that people will not hold the elites accountable. They'll basically think about, in material terms, the physical institutions that gave them that power instead of them, right? They know good people are optimistic about human nature and want to see the best in people, so they can't help but justify it in their minds as if this person could have been a good guy. Joseph Stalin could have been a priest if he wasn't a dictator, when Joseph Stalin was just Joseph Stalin. That's all he was. He would have been the same corrupted man without power, but he wouldn't have been a harm to anyone because he would have been powerless, right? That's the thing. These good people, they feel like it's a taboo, right? Like taking the staff of leadership makes them a bad person somehow. And because of this, they will be like, oh, I don't want this. I feel like it'll make me a bad person, so I'm not going to touch it. And then a bad person is going to go, ha, 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 the psyop worked. And he's going to grab that staff and he's going to start harming people with it, right? So I said to my friend, listen, the fact that you didn't create a cult, right, means that all of those people that would have followed you, that you could have improved their lives. You could have been like, my divine wisdom is that you do this good thing for yourself, right? You do this, you help your community this way. Well, now you know what's going to happen? These people, they're sheep, right? You could have been the shepherd. You could have helped your flock. But now they're probably going to join something like this organization, this terrorist group. They might join the Order of the Nine Angles. They might join Adam Waffen. They might join, some, the Islamic Brotherhood, the Mormons, whatever it is. They might join, cults that might be harmful or just annoying, like the Jehovah's Witnesses. These people, are pure. They're pure. They're pure humans. They're worker drones. They have no will of their own. And that's a beautiful thing, because if you have one person that has goodwill and you have a million people that don't have will, but they have works, you can work with the power of a million people to build utopia, to build beauty, eternal, So I say to him, well, you know what? You might have been worried about, the power you have over them going down a bad road. But here's the thing. Someone that has no desire to protect the flock, that is a wolf, not a shepherd, that is a wolf, will take this flock and consume them, drive them off the cliff, and pick them off one by one. And it's not a good situation, but that's what will happen, right? So how do I put this? How this kind of relates to this cult that is harming children, right? We don't have enough good propaganda. We don't have enough good messages. We have messages of materialism, individualism, things like that, and people genuinely believe it because people don't critically think, It's like with any religion, right? You're going to have the elites within the religion that actually think about their theology, they think about the divine, but most of everyone else is just working class people. They might show up to communion or the animal sacrifice or whatever it is, do a solar ritual. It doesn't matter. Worship the goddess. I don't know. Praise Jesus. But the thing is, they're more material. They're workers. They're drones, right? So there's so many people that are upset. They see all of this evil. They see people that are harming our children in broad daylight, that are manipulating them, grooming them, and no one is aware, right? And they're like, why aren't you thinking, right? Why are you not thinking? Why are you not doing anything? And it's, if you're thinking that way, that's a good thing. Because if you're thinking about the power these bad people hold over innocent people, over children, you shouldn't be thinking about making more people aware of the situation, because that doesn't do anything. They have a short attention span. If you want to actually help people, if you want to prevent children from being raped and murdered or hurting themselves, then you need to think, how can I attain as much power and influence as these literal child predators? How can I have the same absolute dictatorial authority and ability to manipulate people as they do, and then use that to protect them? Because that's the only way you protect them. If you go about trying to raise awareness about free will and all of this, it'll just continue to get worse. And it's only gotten worse over the past couple thousand years because of this mentality, because of rational, reasonable thinking, right? The fact is that democracy is something you can only have amongst leaders. The fact is reason, philosophy, deeper theological thought, the occult, hidden knowledge is something that was only meant for a small group of people, right? So if you're not willing to be an elitist, you're not actually going to do anything to free literal adult baby children, like adults that are just children, from cults. And you're not going to do anything to help literal children. You're just going to let it happen. And you're going to use your made up, imaginary, elitist created morality to enable the problem, right? So Oftentimes when I hear people say, I want to raise awareness against cults, I want to stop child grooming, I want to whatever, it's like, you see, the thing is, you need to be a great person. There's only good people, terrible people, and great people, right? Being a good person is a cop out. It's actually, it's between greatness and the terrible, right? It's actually, I'd say it's lower than that. Good people, I think, are worse than terrible people because good people on a daily basis allow terrible people to take power. In fact, good people give people that are terrible the torch. Good people enable grooming, you know? That I know that sounds crazy, but that's true. That's the way it works. That's how humanity works, right? So if you can't accept what you are, what species you belong to, and what our nature is, we are a slave race, right? And if you think like a master, you shouldn't be worried about teaching other people to think like a master. You should worry about cultivating your own slaves. If you think like a general, you should worry about cultivating your own warriors. If you're a merchant, you shouldn't worry about financially empowering everyone else. You should worry about building a business. You know, if you think like a coach, you shouldn't be trying to train everyone to become a coach. You should start training people to be football players. You should train people to fight. If you have the ability to coordinate and organize and you have critical thinking skills, that means you have the ability to gain the same amount of influence to fight against evil. Because you only fight against evil when you have a good, morally driven elite that is willing to do anything and everything to gain power and then control everything from the top down. It never comes from the bottom up. It's always the top down. So ultimately, if you want to save your children from being groomed, you have to develop your own aristocracy. You have to develop your own elite. You have to own that. You have to accept that. And you have to realize that it's actually a beautiful thing, you know? If you don't, well, I'm just going to go pray for our children because you're the problem, you know? This situation isn't going to get better until we make it better, but we need to accept our power, which is why, again, I don't play card games, right? I don't play board games, and if I do, I always cheat on principle, out of like honorable and virtuous principles. I always cheat whenever I'm with a friend, and they say, "Oh, you're an honest person, right? You always pay back your debts, whatever." I have a friend who is probably watching this video who I borrow money from and I still intend on paying him back. If we ever play like a card game, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat on you. I'm going to hide an ace up my sleeve. I am going to be a slickster and a trickster. Anytime I fight someone, I always play dirty because I want to win, right? On virtuous principle, on those grounds, whenever I'm in a competition with someone, I will play dirty, right? If I am to duel someone, I will soak their black powder pistol in a barrel of water, and then I'll make sure that my gun is good, so they can't shoot, and I shoot them. You might think that's a terrible thing, but that's the way the world works. That's what the world is. Because if you're not cheating, if you're not putting your enemy at a disadvantage, they're putting you at a disadvantage. Imagine thinking, oh, well, I don't want to cheat. I want to do the right thing. And then, your competitor is like, all right, I soaked their gun in a barrel of water. And then you're like, well, I'm going to shoot my shot and hope that righteousness prevails. Your gun doesn't go off and they shoot you in the head. That's the way it works. This is why good people don't take power. This is why good people can't even save their own children, So, yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is. We are a hive mind species that is meant to be ruled over by an elite. You need to choose your elite. You need to organize your elite. You need to figure out your aristocracy, So, yeah, it's, the elites will take war games, training, right? Because, sports are meant to train men to fight, so that when peacetime is over and they go to war, they're not fat, they're not lazy, they've been training, right? And that's the original point of fighting. You want to play dirty, right? If you're fighting in war games, you want to do everything. There is no honor in combat. There's no rules of war. If you're in a, like every sport, every fighting sport that has a long history started off because of some relationship to warfare. At least most of them, except like Aikido, right? Um, but yeah, most forms of fighting started off with no rules, and it was just like the most dirtiest, dishonorable types of things you could do. And then over time, you know, as mediocrity takes over and the elites want to maintain their power, they will start replacing killers with actors. They will start making sports that were meant to train people to win in battle to become basically a thespian playwright, like WWE or football or things like that, so that when children watch it, right, and they see these rules, they see these big, strong idols of theirs, they're like, oh, well, my big, strong idols follow the rules, right? And following the rules is more important than winning. And then how do you think this affects your child's life, right? And imagine what happens when they're put in a situation where, one of their friends is being hurt by like a predator or, someone who's manipulative or whatever it is, and they don't want to step in because the only way to step in is to break the rules, right? And then you create this kind of domestication, and this is in itself a type of grooming. I don't watch sports because they're not war games. I only watch war games. I only watch things that could actually strengthen someone, right? Not these things where it's just acting, that's very important to me. Actually, that's a lie. That is a complete lie. That is a contradiction. I will call myself out on that. I watch hockey as a guilty pleasure. But still, I still consciously think about it. Although hockey is still violent and people still get hurt. So, I mean, yeah. But yeah, no, it's all superficial. It's all superficial. And I don't think people realize, what's at stake here, the fate of our civilization. It's, but yeah, no. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say on that. I hope you have a good day.